The hail was falling so violently that it sounded like the sky was shattering. People screamed, tents collapsed, and the cheerful spring fair mutated into chaos within seconds. But the storm wasn't the terrifying part. What truly froze Emily Carter's blood was the empty space where her daughter had been standing. "Lila!" she screamed, spinning through the spiraling panic. "Baby, answer me!" Her heart slammed against her ribs as she pushed past crowds, her raincoat half unzipped, ponytail soaked through in the first 60 seconds of the storm. A mother always knows the difference between a child who is hiding and a child who is gone, and in that moment, Emily felt it. The wrongness, the terror, the disappearing of a heartbeat she had sworn to protect. Lightning flashed, the carousel lights flickered erratically. Teachers herded children like frightened ducklings toward the Civic Center's glass doors, but Emily was running the opposite direction. Against the current, against logic, against everything except the instinct inside her screaming, "Find her, find." One more cry tore from her throat, raw, animalistic, "Lila!" But Lila could not hear her, because Lila was already a block away, curled beneath a metal bench, shielding her head with her trembling arms as hailstones the size of apricots smashed around her like bullets. And that was when a sleek charcoal SUV rolled to a violent stop beside the curb. The door burst open. A man stepped out into the white storm. The hail hit hard, pounding his shoulders, slicing the air, bruising on impact. But he didn't flinch. Maybe because he'd been hit harder by life before. Maybe because, in that instant, nothing mattered except the tiny shape shaking beneath the bench. Adrian Hayes, single father, tech sector millionaire, the name whispered on magazine covers, dropped to his knees on the frozen pavement. He wasn't dressed for saving anyone. He was dressed for a boardroom presentation he'd been heading to before the storm. But destiny rarely asks if you're prepared. "Hey," he said softly, lifting the bench with one arm and shielding the girl with the other. "I got you." Lila looked up with watery blue eyes, a lemon-yellow bow crooked in her hair, her breath coming in choked hiccups. "Mommy." "We'll find her," Adrian promised. He wrapped his heavy coat around her tiny body, lifted her against his chest, and sprinted back to the SUV. Inside, the heater blasted warm air. He buckled her in gently, checking for cuts. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she sniffled. "Lila." "Lila," he repeated, the name rolling strangely familiar across his tongue. "You're safe now." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, she peeked up at him with trembling lips and said words that hit like a crash of thunder. "My mom used to tell me about you." Adrian froze. "About me?" "Uh-huh." Lila traced her fingers over the stitching of his coat. "She said there was once a brave man with kind eyes, like you." The world shifted, not because of what she said, but because something in her voice, in her face, felt like a whisper from his past. A past he thought he'd buried under ambition, and burnout, and sleepless nights raising his son alone. A past that had worn a yellow sundress, carried sketchbooks everywhere, and laughed like she didn't know how beautiful she was. Emily. God, could it be? No, that was ridiculous. It had been 6 years. And the last time he'd seen Emily Carter, she'd stood at a train station crying silently as he boarded a plane toward a future that never happened the way he thought it would. He swallowed hard, pushing the thought away. Coincidence, nothing more. But the universe doesn't deal in coincidences, only circles. By the time he drove straight to the community medical center, the staff were already triaging storm injuries. Nurses rushed forward to help Lila, but the girl refused to let go of Adrian's hand. She clung to him like he was the last safe place left in the world. A nurse finally coaxed her into taking warm broth while Adrian sat beside her on a flimsy plastic chair, the elegant millionaire looking painfully out of place in that cramped fluorescent room. Hair damp, shirt wrinkled, tie forgotten. He gently brushed melting ice from her curls with a towel. Then the door opened, and everything inside Adrian's chest stopped moving. Emily. She stood frozen in the doorway, breathless, rain-soaked, eyes wide with disbelief. She didn't look like the girl from 6 years ago, no longer reckless, no longer hopeful in the way young hearts are. But God, she was still beautiful. Beautiful in the way storms are beautiful, strong, wild, uncontainable. Her lips parted. "Adrian?" It was barely a whisper, as if saying his name might break her. Lila gasped, jumping up. "Mommy!" Emily dropped to her knees, pulling her daughter into her arms, sobbing into her hair. "I found you, baby. I found you." When she finally looked up, Adrian was still standing there, soaking in the sight of her like a man starved for years. She wiped her tears, voice shaking. "You saved her." And then, because fate has a cruel sense of humor, Lila piped up cheerfully. "Mommy, this is the man from your stories." Adrian blinked. "Stories?" Emily's face drained of color. "Lila, you said he was brave and kind," Lila continued proudly. "And he is." Silence didn't just fall. It suffocated the room. Adrian's pulse roared. Emily looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. And Adrian? He felt everything. Old love, old wounds, old questions rush back like a tsunami. He stepped forward, voice low, raw. "Emily, why would you tell her stories about me?" She flinched. "It's complicated. Make it simple." Their eyes locked. For the first time in 6 years, neither of them looked away. And that's when Emily broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with one single, quiet sentence that made Adrian feel like the ground beneath him had cracked wide open. "Because I never forgot you." The storm passed, but it didn't really pass, not where it mattered. Emily took Lila home that night, bathed the hail grit from her hair, wrapped her in a fuzzy unicorn blanket, and pretended everything was normal. They made hot chocolate. They watched cartoons. They laughed a little too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. But every time Lila mentioned the brave man from your stories, Emily's chest tightened. She had always imagined that if she ever saw Adrian Hayes again, it would be from far away. A headline, a magazine cover, a glimpse across an airport terminal. Not in a cramped clinic room with her daughter calling him a hero. When Lila finally fell asleep, Emily sat at the edge of her bed and watched her chest rise and fall, fingers tangled around the new stuffed penguin the nurse had given her. "You weren't supposed to meet him," she whispered into the dark. "Not like this. Maybe not ever." Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. For a second she considered ignoring it. Then she saw the message preview. "It's Adrian. We should talk." Her heart lurched. She stared at the screen so long the light dimmed. Finally she typed back 2 words she instantly regretted and instantly needed. "Tomorrow." Coffee? The next afternoon, the town's lakeside cafe looked exactly the same as it had 6 years earlier, and nothing like it at all. Back then, she'd sat there with a sketchbook and a plastic cup of iced tea, while Adrian drafted pitch decks and circled phrases on printouts. He'd been all sharp suits and big dreams, the kind of man who made New York sound like a destiny instead of a place. She'd been the art student who somehow made him forget about numbers for a few hours. Now, as Emily walked up the creaky steps, there was no sketchbook in her hand. Just a fraying tote bag stuffed with lesson plans and a head full of memories she'd tried to file as finished. Adrian already sat at their old table, hands wrapped around a mug he hadn't touched. There were lines at the corners of his eyes now, a different kind of tired in his shoulders, but somehow seeing him there felt like opening a door she'd only ever peered at through a keyhole. He stood when he saw her. "Emily." "Hi," she said, because anything else felt too big. They made small talk at first. Weather. Storm damage. The fair's ruined tents. It was almost funny how 2 people who once knew each other's secrets now had to warm up with topics anyone could use with a stranger. But silence has sharp teeth. It bit down somewhere around minute 10. Adrian set his mug down, eyes steady. 6 years, he said quietly. "You vanished." "You boarded a plane," she replied. "I just stayed where I was." He swallowed. That's not how I remember it." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "You remember it in first class. I remember it with a pregnancy test in a gas station bathroom." The words hung there, raw and irreversible, his face drained of color. "Emily, don't," she said quickly, voice trembling. "I'm not telling you to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because Lila already started telling you for me." He stared at her like the floor had moved. "She's 5, almost 6. You left the city the same week I signed that deal," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "I thought you needed space. I told myself I'd come back once I'd fixed everything, built everything." "You didn't," she said softly. "I know," he replied, shame curling in his voice. "In my head it was temporary. I kept waiting for the right time to call, and suddenly years had passed, and it was easier to pretend I hadn't destroyed the best thing I'd ever had than admit I'd chosen myself over you." Emily looked away, out to the lake, where the water shivered under a soft breeze. "You didn't just choose yourself," she said. "You chose the version of you that couldn't make room for me." He flinched because it was true. Then, quietly, he said, "What happened after?" She told him, not every detail, not every sob on the bathroom floor, but enough. How she'd found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after he left, how she'd drafted a dozen messages she never sent, how she'd watched his face on business articles while her stomach grew heavy with a child he didn't know about. She told him about dropping out of her design program, taking any job she could find, moving back to her hometown when rent swallowed her alive, how she'd spent nights terrified she was ruining Lila's life before it even began. "Everyone said I should track you down," she admitted. "But you were on magazine covers, Adrian. You were Forbes 30 under 30. You were engaged. I saw the photos." He closed his eyes for a second. "That engagement didn't last. Neither did we," she answered. "And I decided my daughter didn't need a father who could disappear again if the market shifted." "You decided for me," he said, not angry, just shattered. "You decided I'd fail her the way I failed you before I ever got a chance to try." "You're right," she whispered. "I did. Maybe that wasn't fair. But at the time, it felt like the only way I knew how to protect her." They sat in that ache for a moment. Then Emily took a deep breath. "I didn't tell you yesterday at the clinic because she was terrified and you were soaked, and it felt like some cruel cosmic joke. I needed a minute to remember how to breathe before I dropped a bomb on both of us." "Is she—" He grappled for the word. "Is Lila my—" "She's ours," Emily cut in softly, "whether we like it or not." The answer hit him like another hailstone, this one landing straight in his chest. He thought of Lila's small fingers clinging to his collar, her voice saying, "My mom used to tell me about you." The way she'd stared at him like he'd stepped out of a bedtime story and into real life. "Does she know?" he asked, throat tight. "No," Emily said quickly. "I never used your name. I just told her there was once a man who made me feel brave when the world felt too big. She filled in the rest with her imagination. She thinks you're some kind of fairy tale." "I'm not," he said hoarsely. "I'm a man who screwed up an entire decade." "Maybe," she said, studying him. "But you're also the man who dove into a hailstorm for a kid he didn't know." He looked away, blinking hard. For a few minutes they let the clatter of plates and hiss of the espresso machine fill the silence. Then Adrian spoke again. "I need to tell you something too." He pulled out his phone and flipped it around to show her a photo on the lock screen. A little boy with a mop of dark hair and sleepy hazel eyes, grinning with a dinosaur tucked under his arm. "This is Noah," he said. "My son." Emily's brows lifted. "He's adorable." "He's also the reason I'm still standing," Adrian said. "His mom left when things went off the rails with the company, when the investors pulled out, when my name started showing up in articles with the word failure next to it. She said she hadn't signed up for living with a sinking ship. I was drowning, Em. But I couldn't sink. Noah didn't let me. I had to learn how to be present, not just successful. That's why I moved back to this town. to get out of the noise, give him something real. Emily traced the rim of her cup, absorbing that. So you're a single dad, too? Yeah, he said with a crooked smile. Guess we're both members of the same unwanted club. For the first time since she sat down, something like warmth flickered between them that wasn't entirely painful. What does this mean, Adrian? She asked at last. For you. For us. For her. He didn't answer right away. It means, he said slowly, that I'm not going to disappear this time. But I also know I can't just kick down the door to her life and claim something I abandoned without even knowing it. I want to know her. I want to be in her world, but I'm willing to do it your way. Slowly, carefully. As long as I get the chance. Emily studied his face, searching for the man she'd loved 6 years ago. He was there, beneath the exhaustion and mistakes and grief. Older, bruised, but there. Start with being around, she said. Not as, surprise, I'm your dad. As Adrian, the man who helped her in a storm. Let her decide how she feels about you. We'll figure out the rest after she has a say. He nodded, relief and fear tangled in his eyes. Deal. The universe apparently decided that wasn't enough drama and handed them an opportunity within 24 hours. The preschool roof had taken a beating from the hail. The board decided to close for 2 days for safety inspections and repairs. Emily was told she still had to attend a mandatory emergency budget meeting as the lead early childhood representative. Childcare? I'll take her, her mom offered over the phone, coughing. It's just a small fever. I'll be fine. You're not babysitting with the flu, Emily said. She hung up, stared at her phone for a full minute, then did the thing she hadn't let herself do in 6 years. She called Adrian first. There's a bookstore downtown, he said a few hours later, crouched beside Noah in the children's aisle when she walked in with Lila. We come every Thursday. Story time, free air conditioning, cheaper than therapy. Lila spotted Noah instantly. Hey, you're the dinosaur boy, she squealed. Noah grinned. You're the penguin girl. In 1 second, they were on the floor with a pile of pop-up books between them as if they'd known each other for years. Adrian stood up to face Emily. If you want to make the meeting, he said, I can take both of them for the afternoon. They seem to think they're best friends already. Every cell in Emily's body screamed that this was too fast, too risky, too much. But then Lila looked up with that hopeful little face and said, Please, Mommy, can we stay? Mr. Adrian knows where the best dinosaur ice cream is. Dinosaur ice cream isn't a thing, Emily said automatically. It is, Adrian countered. It's just mint chip in a T-Rex cup. Her lips twitched. Of course it was. Just the afternoon, she finally agreed. I'll pick them up by 5. The zoo on the edge of town was almost empty thanks to the weird weather. The storm had scared most families into staying home, which made it perfect for 2 kids and a man trying to figure out how to be present in 2 lives at once. Lila pulled Noah from enclosure to enclosure, her tiny fingers gripping his wrist as if she'd appointed herself his personal tour guide. That one's a sun lion, she announced at the lion habitat, because his mane looks like the sun. That's not a thing, Noah said gravely, then added, but it should be. Adrian walked a few steps behind, watching them, something tight and aching in his chest, loosening with every squeal. He filmed them on his phone as they made up names for animals, marshmallow panda, thunder elephant, and sent one short clip to Emily with the caption, Still alive, no injuries, minor sugar overdose pending. She replied with a single emoji, an anxious face, but he swore he could feel the edge of her smile through the screen. They finished the afternoon in a tiny art shop near the zoo. Lila pressed her nose to the glass of the display case, eyes wide at the rows of colored pencils, sketchbooks, watercolor sets. Mommy loves these, she breathed. She had a magic pencil box when I was little. She said it could draw anything she dreamed. Adrian swallowed. He remembered that box. It had sat on their shared table in college, battered and covered in stickers. He moved closer to the case, drawn to a small wooden box with a sliding lid and a smooth blank space on top. Pick one, he told Lila. Anyone you want. Mommy will say it's too expensive, she said immediately. Mommy can argue with me later, he replied, but this is for you. The clerk offered engraving. Adrian didn't even hesitate. Write Lila's stories on top, he said. When he placed the box into her hands outside the store, Lila hugged it like a treasure chest. I'm going to draw everything I love, she announced. You, Mommy, Noah, the sun lion. I'd be honored to share a page with a sun lion, Adrian said genuinely. Later, driving the kids home as they slept in the back seat, he glanced in the rearview mirror and almost drove off the road. Lila's head had flopped to one side in sleep, mouth slightly open, hair sticking to her forehead. It was the way her brow furrowed even in rest, the way one hand curled under her chin, the shape of her nose, the tilt of her jaw. They were his features, copy-pasted into a smaller face softened by Emily's light. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Coincidence had just been obliterated. That night, after dropping Noah off with his teenage sitter, after replaying every second of the day until his brain buzzed, Adrian found himself standing on Emily's front porch with rain pattering softly on the overhang. He hadn't planned a speech. He barely knew how he'd gotten there. He only knew the weight in his chest was too heavy to carry alone anymore. The porch light flicked on. Emily opened the door in an oversized t-shirt and leggings, hair thrown into a messy bun. She looked surprised and exhausted, and very much like home. Is everything okay? She asked. The kids, they're fine, he said quickly. In fact, they're perfect. That's the problem. She blinked. I don't follow. He pulled something from his pocket, a small braided bracelet with a heart-shaped charm. She dropped this in my car, he said. On the charm, carefully etched in a child's shaky hand, were 2 letters, A.H. She told me she made it for someone brave and kind, and she hoped someday she'd figure out who that was. His voice roughened. Emily, she's making tributes to a ghost she doesn't even know belongs to her. Emily's eyes filled faster than she could blink the tears away. I never meant to make him a ghost, she whispered. I just didn't know how to explain a man who left before he knew he was a dad. But I'm here now, he said, stepping closer. And today, watching her draw and laugh and boss Noah around, I realized something. You may have been trying to protect her from my absence, but now you're protecting her from my presence too. And she deserves the whole truth, not the story you kept because I hurt you. Her shoulders shook. Do you think I don't know that? She snapped softly. Do you think I haven't stayed up every night wondering when this day would come? Wondering if I'd destroyed her chance at knowing you because I was too scared of watching you walk away again? He took a breath that felt like it scraped his lungs. I don't want to walk away this time, but I can't keep pretending I'm just some guy who happened to find her in a storm. She's my daughter, Emily. Every time she looks at me, it feels like the universe is screaming at both of us. We can't pretend not to hear it forever. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the rain. Then Emily's face crumpled. You're right, she said, voice breaking. You're absolutely right. She pressed her trembling fingers to her lips, then slowly dropped her hand and met his gaze head on. Yes, Adrian, she's yours. Lila is your daughter. The world tilted. He had imagined this answer, feared it, hoped for it. But hearing it out loud from Emily's mouth was like being hit by the storm all over again. He pressed one hand against the porch railing to steady himself, the other still gripping the little bracelet so tightly the metal dug into his palm. All this time, he whispered. 5 years. I missed her first word, her first steps, her first day of school. I missed everything. I know, Emily said, tears streaking freely now. And there isn't a single day I don't feel guilty about that. But back then I was drowning. You were falling apart in public. I thought throwing you a child on top of the wreckage would just bury all 3 of us. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was right. But I can't rewrite it. He closed his eyes, breathing through the grief, through the anger that had nowhere to go but the past. When he opened them again, his voice was steadier. I don't want to punish you, he said quietly. Punishing you punishes her. I need time to learn how to carry this without breaking. And I need your word that from now on, we handle every step together. No more secrets." Emily nodded, wiping her cheeks. "You have it." Just then, a small voice drifted from the hallway. "Mom?" They both turned. Lila stood there in her pajamas, hair sticking out in every direction, clutching a stuffed penguin. She blinked at Adrian, then at her mother. "You're crying," she said, puzzled. Emily opened her mouth, no sound coming out. Adrian knelt down so he was eye level with Lila. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. "Hey, sunshine," he said gently. "We were just talking about wishes." Lila's eyes lit. "Oh." "I have one." "Yeah?" he asked. "Well, what is it?" "That you don't go away," she said simply. "Storms go away. Bad days go away. But I want you to stay." Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Adrian felt something inside him crack all the way open. He swallowed hard. "That," he whispered, "is one wish I'm finally ready to grant." The morning after that fragile, rain-soaked confession unfolded with a strange, quiet newness. Like the world hadn't changed, but they had. Adrian didn't rush in like a man claiming territory. He didn't demand answers or force labels. He simply showed up. For the first time in 6 years, he showed up everywhere Emily and Lila were. When Emily walked Lila to preschool, Adrian was already there with Noah, 2 coffees in hand, one with vanilla creamer, the way she liked it but never admitted. When Emily stayed late sorting damaged classroom supplies after the storm, Adrian arrived with boxes of new ones donated by the Hayes Foundation, which was funny, because the Hayes Foundation didn't exist until 2 hours earlier. When Lila pulled out her new engraved pencil box and sketched a crooked little family of 4, herself, Mommy, Noah, and a tall man with messy hair, Adrian sat on the floor beside her and pretended not to tremble. But the closeness wasn't all easy. Emily kept drawing invisible lines. Adrian kept stopping himself an inch short of crossing them. There were moments, a brush of hands while buckling Lila's car seat, a shared look when Noah and Lila burst into giggles on the swings, moments that felt like déjà vu wrapped in possibility. And just as they began stitching old wounds into something resembling a future, something darker ripped the seams. Celeste came back, not with apologies, not with flowers, with lawyers. It happened on a bright Saturday, the kind that should have been all bubbles and playground laughter. Adrian had taken the kids to the park, Noah chasing butterflies, Lila struggling to tie a ribbon around the neck of her penguin. Emily had come too, standing a few feet away, sipping iced tea, smiling at the scene like she'd never seen a picture so perfect. Then a sleek black car pulled up. A woman stepped out in a tailored cream coat, sunglasses perched on her head, every inch of her screaming money and trouble. Celeste Caldwell, Adrian's ex-wife, Noah's biological mother, the woman who walked out when the company nearly collapsed and the headlines began to bite. She walked toward them with sharp, echoing steps and a smile that belonged in a courtroom, not a playground. "Well," she said coolly, "doesn't this look domestic?" Adrian stiffened. Emily froze. Noah shrank back slightly. Lila hugged her penguin tighter. "Miles," Celeste cooed, using Noah's full name like a weapon. "Come to Mommy." Noah didn't move. Celeste's smile faltered. "Miles." Adrian stepped between them, voice steady. "Don't push him." Celeste's eyes flicked to Emily, taking her in, judging, dissecting. "So this is her," she said with disdain. "The small-town art teacher who replaced me." Emily didn't blink. "I didn't replace anyone," she said calmly. "I just showed up when your son needed someone." Celeste's expression tightened. "Jackson, we need to talk," she said, using his formal name like an accusation. "I want Noah back, permanently." "You left him," Adrian replied. "For almost 2 years." Celeste's jaw twitched. "And now I'm ready to fix that." Adrian stared at her like she'd grown horns. "You can't show up because you're bored or lonely or want a photo op and expect to take him." "Watch me," she said coldly. "I've already spoken to my attorney, and I have a right to pursue sole custody, especially given your unstable history." Emily stepped forward before Adrian could. You mean the breakdown you walked out on? Celeste's mouth parted. Listen carefully, Emily said softly, because I won't repeat myself. You don't get to abandon your child and then weaponize the wounds you helped create. Even Adrian blinked at her. Celeste turned sharply on her heel. See you in court. And she left. The kids sensed the tension instantly. Noah refused to let go of Adrian's hand for hours. Lila kept asking Emily, "Is the fancy coat lady bad?" Emily didn't answer, because she didn't know. Some storms came without warning. Some storms came wearing lipstick. That night, rain began to fall again. Adrian came to Emily's house drenched, exhausted, and carrying a folder of documents, the beginnings of a custody war Celeste had launched by 6 p.m. He sat on Emily's couch, hands shaking, the weight of 2 children, one biological, one newly discovered, pressing on his shoulders like boulders. I won't lose him, he whispered. Not again. Not ever. Emily knelt in front of him. You won't. You don't know that. I know who you are now, she said firmly. Not the man who ran 6 years ago. The man who shows up. The man who dives into storms. He looked up at her then, really looked, and the rawness in his eyes nearly undid her. Tell me what to do, he murmured. Tell me how not to break. She reached up and cupped his face with both hands, her thumbs brushing rain and tears alike. Let me help you carry it, she whispered. You don't have to do this alone. Something shifted in that moment, something fragile but real. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a promise. It was the simple, quiet truth that after 6 years of distance, they were finally standing on the same side of the storm. But the universe wasn't done testing them. 2 days later, Celeste arrived at the school unannounced. Not for Noah, for Lila. She cornered Emily near the front doors, fake kindness dripping off her voice. Congratulations, she said. Looks like you trapped another man with a baby. Emily stiffened. Don't talk about my daughter. Why not? She looks like him, Celeste said sweetly. Must be tiring raising a secret. Emily's fingers tightened around her bag strap. Walk away. Or what? Celeste smirked. You'll tell him you lied for 6 years? Because you did, sweetheart. You stole his choice. Judges love that. That one landed, deep. Celeste saw it and smiled like she'd won something. Good luck, Emily, she purred. Secrets always rot. But Emily didn't bend. She didn't break. She just walked inside and breathed through the panic clawing at her ribs. She'd spent years building walls around her heart. But now that heart wasn't just hers. And she wasn't going to let anyone, especially Celeste, fracture the fragile, growing thing between Adrian and his daughter. Meanwhile, Adrian was doing the one thing Celeste didn't expect. Fighting back intelligently. He hired a top family lawyer, gathered character witnesses, compiled therapy records, daycare letters, pediatric evaluations, everything showing Noah's stability with him. He even had a psychological assessment done voluntarily. You're the most stable, unstable client I've ever had, his lawyer said. But the ace in his hand wasn't paperwork. It was a video. A short one, filmed by Noah's daycare teacher at Adrian's request. Noah sat on his small bed, clutching his stuffed fox. Daddy reads to me every night, he said quietly. He makes pancakes. He talks to me when I have bad dreams. Then, looking directly into the camera, he added, I don't want to leave my home again. When Celeste saw it during mediation, her lawyer leaned over and whispered one sentence that shifted the entire war. The judge will side with the child. Celeste's face cracked. Then she stormed out. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was the first breath Adrian had been able to take in days. That evening, rain tapped gently on Emily's windows. Adrian stood on her porch again, this time with a steadier gaze, cleaner breath. It's done, he said. She's dropping the case. Emily stepped aside to let him in, relief washing through her. Noah is safe? He's mine, Adrian said softly. And not in danger of being taken. Emily nodded, swallowing emotion. Adrian looked at her for a long, quiet moment before saying what he'd held back for years. This time, he murmured, I'm not afraid of the future. He took a step closer. Not afraid of you. Another step. Or her. And finally, or us. Emily felt something break open inside her. Hope, terror, love, maybe all three. She whispered, Adrian, I don't want the past, he said. I want what comes next, with you, with her, with them. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. When she opened them, he was still there, still choosing. And for the first time since the day she watched him board a plane, Emily let herself choose back. She stepped into him, hands trembling against his chest, forehead resting against his. Okay, she whispered. Then stay. Outside, two small faces peeked through the curtains. Lila holding her penguin, Noah holding his fox, watching their parents finally find their way back. The storm was over, but the story wasn't. It was just beginning. The next morning dawned soft and golden, the kind of light that slips quietly through curtains and makes the world look gentler than it really is. Inside Emily's kitchen, pancakes sizzled on the griddle while Noah and Lila sat at the table coloring, Lila drawing a crooked sun lion, Noah sketching a lopsided spaceship. Adrian stood beside Emily, close enough that she could feel his warmth, far enough that they both still pretended it didn't mean everything. He flipped a pancake. Yours are better, he murmured. She smiled without looking at him. You burn fewer. Their arms brushed, neither moved away. Lila suddenly held up her drawing. Mommy, look, King Sun Lion. Emily bent down. He's very brave. Lila nodded solemnly. Like Mr. Adrian. Adrian almost dropped the spatula. Emily pinched her lips to hide her smile. Later that afternoon, they went to the small lake on the edge of town. The air smelled like early summer, cut grass, warm earth, the faint sweetness of blooming clover. The kids darted ahead, chasing dragonflies while Emily and Adrian walked behind them, steps falling into an easy rhythm. For a moment, it almost felt like they were already a family, already something whole. But life never lets anyone settle for long. As they reached the dock, Emily's phone buzzed. A message from the school district. Mandatory staff restructuring meeting. Funding cuts. Possible layoffs. Her chest tightened. Teaching was the only steady thing she'd built. Losing it would unravel everything. She didn't say anything, but Adrian noticed the way her shoulders stiffened, the way she stared at her phone too long. What's wrong? He asked quietly. Nothing, she lied. His voice softened. Em. The way he said her name, low, familiar, careful, made her exhale. They might cut positions, she admitted. If they do, mine could be one of them. Without hesitation, he said, If that happens, we'll figure it out. She blinked at him. We? Yes, he said firmly. We. The words sank into her chest like warmth after a long freeze. Before she could answer, Lila and Noah raced back toward them. Mommy! Lila shouted. We found wishes! They held 4 dandelions, thin, fragile, glowing in the light. Can we blow them together? Noah asked. Emily knelt beside them. Okay, ready? 4 hands lifted. Emily's, Adrian's, Lila's, Noah's. 1, 2, 3. The seeds lifted into the sky like tiny lanterns, swirling and drifting until the breeze carried them out over the water. And in that single fleeting moment, Emily realized the truth she'd been running from for years. Some families aren't built by time. Some are built by courage, some by forgiveness, and some by finding each other in the middle of a storm. But storms still come. And the next one arrived on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. Emily was grading craft projects when the principal slipped into her classroom with an envelope in his hand. Her breath caught. We received your evaluation, he said gently. I'm sorry, Emily. Budget cuts are hitting the early education program hardest. Your position won't be renewed. The world blurred. You've been extraordinary, he added. This isn't about you. But it didn't matter what it was about. All she heard was, "You're out." She nodded, swallowed the grief burning up her throat, and held herself together until she reached her car. Then her hands shook. Her breath hitched. Everything spun. Her phone buzzed, Adrian calling. She didn't answer. He called again, and again, and again. Finally, she picked up, voice thin. "Em?" His tone sharpened. "What happened? She couldn't get the rest out. "Where are you?" "Parking lot," she whispered. "School." "Don't move," he said instantly. "I'm coming." 6 minutes later, his SUV pulled up. He didn't wait for her to climb in. He walked straight to her, cupped her face gently between his hands, and whispered, "You're okay. I've got you. Just breathe." Her walls, those carefully built, fiercely protected walls, finally gave way. She collapsed into his chest, shaking. He held her like the world depended on it. "You're not alone," he murmured. "Not anymore." He drove her home, made her tea, let her cry, sat beside her on the couch while the sun dipped behind the rooftops. When the quiet settled, he took her hand. "Emily," he said softly, "I know you think this is the worst thing that could have happened, but sometimes life clears a path on purpose." She sniffed. "What path?" "Yours," he said simply. "The one you put aside when I left." She blinked at him. "You're still an artist," he said. "Lila draws because of you. Noah paints because of you. You inspire people without trying." Her voice wavered. "Adrian?" "I'm not asking you to jump," he said, squeezing her hand. "I'm just asking you to let yourself imagine something better." Before she could reply, Lila ran in, clutching her new pencil box. "Mommy," she said breathlessly, "I made something." She unfolded a paper, a drawing, 4 figures holding hands. Lila, Noah, Adrian, Emily. Underneath, in messy 6-year-old handwriting, "Our family." Emily covered her mouth, eyes filling. Adrian's chest shook with a quiet, overwhelming breath. And just like that, the path didn't seem so impossible anymore. Weeks passed, softly, steadily, beautifully. Adrian and Emily grew into each other the way dawn grows into morning. Slow, warm, certain. No grand gestures, no rushed declarations. Just presence and consistency and love so quiet it felt like breathing. Emily started taking small commissions, portraits, nursery murals, children's book sketches. Adrian rented a tiny studio for her without telling her until she found the key sitting in her coat pocket. She pushed him playfully for that, kissed him for it later. One night, after putting the kids to bed, they sat outside under the string lights Adrian had hung across Emily's patio. He reached into his pocket, not with a ring, but with a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her. It was Lila's first drawing of the 4 of them. He'd laminated it. "Why did you?" she asked softly. "Because," he said, "the day she drew that was the day I knew." "Knew what?" "That I didn't want to spend another day without you." She looked at him, heart full, eyes soft. "Adrian." He leaned in. She didn't pull back. Their foreheads touched first, then their lips. Slow, certain. 6 years overdue. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a storm. It was something better. A beginning. 6 months later, the garden behind their new home, their home, glowed under warm lantern light. Lavender lined the walkway. Wooden chairs faced a small arch wrapped in fabric and summer blooms. Emily stepped forward in a simple white dress, her hair braided the way she used to wear it when she was young and fearless. Lila scattered petals ahead of her. Noah carried a velvet ring box, shoulders straight with pride. Adrian waited at the end of the aisle, eyes soft, hands shaking. When Emily reached him, he whispered, "I never believed in second chances." She smiled. "Good thing love doesn't need permission." The ceremony was small, tender, perfect. When they exchanged rings, Noah whispered loudly, "Daddy, don't drop it." Lila giggled so hard she snorted. Everyone laughed. Later, as night settled over the garden, the four of them released paper lanterns together, 4 lights rising into the dark, 4 hearts finally aligned. No storms, no fear, just family. As the lanterns drifted into the sky, Emily slipped her hand into Adrian's and whispered, "We found our way back." Adrian lifted their intertwined hands and kissed her knuckles. "No," he whispered. "You and Lila found me. I'm just lucky you let me stay." And together, with Noah half asleep on Adrian's shoulder, Lila chasing fireflies with her penguin tucked under her arm, and the night warm with possibility, they stepped into the kind of forever that doesn't begin with lightning but with the quiet after, with home after.